So we are asked to sketch the following parabola, y equals 2x squared minus 5x minus 7. We've done similar questions in the past, except that they were in factored form. So here we're going to have to factor ourselves first, and then use the different key features in order to graph it. So in order to factor it, I'm looking for two numbers that add up to make -5, and that same two numbers that I can multiply to give me the product of 2 and -7, which is -14. So I'm going to think about the factors of -14. I don't know why I wrote negative twice. So they are -1 and 14, 1 and -14, 2 and -2 and 7, and 2 and -7. And the pair that has a sum of -5, so this is these add up to make 13, these add up to make -13, these add up to make 5, so it's these last two that add up to make -5. And as I said before, you don't really need to write out this step, like this section here, if you can do it in your head. So I have my original standard form. So I'm going to decompose it, and the -5x, instead of that, I'm going to write the 2 and the 7 that I found above. The -7, I mean. So instead of -5x, I'm going to write 2x minus 7x. And then everything else I'm going to copy the same way. Okay, next I'm going to factor by grouping these two together and these two together, and I'm going to factor out a common factor. So here they both have a 2 in common and they have an x in common. So I'm going to factor out 2x, and I'm left with, here dividing it by 2x, I'm left with x, and dividing this by 2x, I'm left with 1. These have a 7 in common, and remember, because this is negative, it'll be -7, and I'm left with x plus 1. Now, they have x plus 1 in common, so that's what I'm going to factor out. And I'm left with 2x minus 7. So that's my factored form of my equation. Now that I have my factored form, I'm going to look for a couple things. I'm going to first look for my x, or I'll start with my y-intercepts actually. I'm going to let x equal 0. So I'm going to input that into the equation. You could actually input it instead of this one. I could even input x equals 0 into that original equation, and that's actually what I'm going to do, just to show you something. So I'm going to say y is equal to, so my original equation was 2x squared minus 5x minus 7, so instead of x I'm going to put 0. And when I simplify, I'm left with -7. And I don't know if you remember, but a while back we did an investigation and we had found that this c value was actually our y-intercept. I know it was a while ago, so I mean we can just plug it in and we'll find it, but just in case any of you remember. Our x-intercepts, I'm going to let y equal 0. And I'm going to use the factored form this time, so y equals 0, and then I have x plus 1 and 2x minus 7. A little tight over here. So that means either this equals 0 or this equals 0. Oh. Okay. And I'm going to solve for x. So x is equal to -1, or x is equal to 2x is equal to 7, divide both sides by 2, and I'm left with 7 over 2. Or, as a decimal, 3.5. So those are my x values, or x-intercepts. And my y-intercept. I also need my Actually, I'm going to graph these while I have them. So my y-intercept was -7. So on my graph, I'm going to go to -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, and -7's right here. And then my x-intercepts were at -1 and positive 3.5. So that's what I'm going to sketch. -1 and positive, this is 3, this is 4, so 3.5 is in between them. Next, I'm looking for my axis of symmetry. You can kind of look at it visually on the graph, but I'm going to need it for my vertex anyway, so I'm going to find it algebraically. So my axis of symmetry I take my x-intercepts and I add them together and divide by 2. So -1 plus 3.5 divided by 2 gives me 2.5 divided by 2 gives me 1.25. So that's going to be my axis of symmetry. And that's what I'm going to input into the equation to find my vertex. And again, you can use either the standard form equation or the factored equation. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to use the factored equation. So instead of x, I'm going to put 1.25. Need to do multiplication first. Okay, so 1.25 plus 1 is 2.25, and 2.5 minus 7 is 4.5. Then I'm going to multiply them. For this, I will need a calculator. So 2.25 times 4.5 gives me 10.125. So that means my vertex is the coordinate 1.25, comma 10.125. If you round to 1 decimal place, that's fine. I'm just being extra. Okay, so this is my vertex that I'm going to plot, and this is my axis of symmetry. Actually, I'll just put it here. Okay, so 1.25 is somewhere over here, and this is 7, 8, 9, 10. So it'll be somewhere over here. Okay, and then I'm just going to connect the dots roughly. That's why it's a sketch. Totally missing some of them. Whoa. Okay, well, hopefully yours looks nicer. Totally missed that, and that's gonna bug me, but what can you do? That's the way it is.